Zhou Xiaoan agrees to wear a demonic ring in exchange for cash to pay his mother's medical bill, but it backfires as the ring unleashes an ancient demon that eats people alive and he can't take it off. The police frame him for murder and are trying to capture him. He vows to take the demonic ring off his fingers and to find a way to prove that he is not a murderer. One day at school, Xiaoan is busy taking a nap while Chairman Bai is explaining an important historical event, the legendary Battle of Mai, which occurred between King Dixon of the Shang dynasty and King Jifa. King Dixon's tyrannical rule had sparked widespread resentment among his subjects, leading King Jifa to marshal an army of 50,000 soldiers to overthrow him. However, Dixon retaliated by sending an army 20 times larger. During the battle, King Dixon's own workers betrayed him, which ultimately led to his defeat, and he took his own life by setting himself on fire, vowing revenge. The chairman then shows the class a picture of a bronze statue of King Dixon that was recently discovered during an excavation at Mui. A blonde girl points out the ring on the statue's hand, and the chairman commends her observation skills. He explains that the ring features intricately detailed engravings, surpassing any other findings in the past. The girl, an exchange student from France, then asks whether the chairman's team had also discovered the ring, but he replies that the ring's current whereabouts remain unknown, and its significance has yet to be determined by experts. While everyone attentively listens to the lecture, Xiaoan continues to sleep at the back of the classroom. A guy named Fubi, sitting next to him, wakes him up and asks if he would like to appraise a treasured item he obtained. Xiaoan declines, saying that he is too busy with work. Fubi tries to tempt him with more money, but when Xiaoan hesitates, Fubi asks him to think about it and tell him later. Later, Xiaoan is at a hospital visiting his mother, who is worried that he has to take care of her and wishes that his dad was present. He reassures her that his dad will be back soon after completing an excavation at Wei Mountain. She then asks about his non-existent girlfriend in an attempt to lift the mood, but he gives her an apple to change the subject. A nurse comes in and takes him out to inform him that he has to pay soon to continue his mother's treatment. In a desperate attempt for money, he calls Fugai and agrees to his deal. He then goes to meet him and finds a group of people armed with weapons present. Xiao is nervous, but has no other choice. Fugai shows him a ring with intricate details, and he carefully examines it before declaring that it appears to be a Shang dynasty artifact. He then suddenly realizes that this must be the ring from King Dixon. Fubi asks him to put on the ring, but he refuses, remembering the last time he followed Fubi's suggestion almost got him into trouble. Fugai then tries to manipulate him by promising to cover his mother's treatment expenses if he puts the ring on. A girl standing there encourages him to put it on as well, and he falls for her looks. Xiaoan wears the ring, but at first nothing happens, disappointing Fugi and the rest of the gang. The girl exclaims that there are no red corpses coming out as the legend suggests, and the other guys start cursing their bad luck. However, soon Xiaoan starts to feel discomfort and nausea. His body begins to transform, and a scary-looking red substance comes out of his mouth. It falls on Fubi's arm and annihilates it, and soon Fubi collapses on the ground. Xiaoan continues to spew more of the red substance, and the girl starts to record the whole thing. Gradually, the red substance merges to form a creature resembling the muscular system of a human being, shocking everyone present. The situation turns chaotic as a man throws a horseshoe talisman at the creature, but it quickly dodges the attack and ends the man's life. Scared, another man throws an axe at the creature, but it sends the axe right back at him and finishes him as well. The creature takes out the rest of the men, and realizing the danger, the girl asks Xiaoan to immediately remove the ring. He tries to remove it, but it's too tight, so the girl helps him. However, the monster soon reappears and targets the girl. He intervenes by stepping between her and the monster. Thinking that his life is going to end, he kisses the girl to fulfill his last wish. To his luck, a man in a black shirt stops the monster with his knife, and they seize the opportunity to escape while the man continues to assault the monster with his knife. The girl takes Xiaoan to a nearby restaurant to seek refuge. She buys some food and starts eating, but when he sees her eating, he is reminded of the horrific scene earlier and becomes nauseous. He expresses his worry to the girl that Fubi and the rest of the guys probably didn't make it and are likely dead. However, the girl continues to eat her food unfazed. He worries about how he will pay his mother's medical bills if Fugai is dead. The girl, however, pays no heed to his worries and invites him to a hotel, shocking him with the idea. At the hotel reception, he sees various types of people and wonders what kind of treatment he will receive for his first time with a girl. But when he sees the price, his heart sinks. The girl, however, is modern and pays the bill with her own cash. He gets super excited when she asks him to follow, and he obeys her like the dog he is. They go to a room, and the girl introduces herself as Jiang Suangyun, revealing her identity as a reporter and giving him her card. He comments on her age, and before his imagination can run wild, she clarifies that she brought him here only to examine the ring closely. She snatches his hand and proceeds with her task. noting that the ring has somehow embedded itself into Xiaoan's flesh. She then asks him several questions while taking notes, such as if he swallowed anything when he was young and so on. She tells him that she needs to take pictures of him, but when he hesitates, she knocks him out and places him on the bed before searching for her phone. However, she can't find it, so she excuses herself to retrieve her phone while Xiaoan is asleep on the bed. In his sleep, Xiaoan experiences nightmares of the horrific monster pursuing him because of the ring. He dreams about the monster attacking him and saying that it will find him as long as he wears that ring. He abruptly awakens and finds that Zhang is not in the room. His confusion is short-lived as some police officers forcefully enter the room and arrest him. A lady police officer tells him that they are arresting him on the charges of murder, but he vehemently claims his innocence, claiming that the killing was the monster's doing. The police officers, however, remain skeptical. He tells the lady police called Mai that the reporter Jiang possesses information about the situation and urges them to meet her, saying that Jiang too escaped the scene with him. Mi and the officer called Sheng take him with them and shows him into a room where he discovers Jiang's lifeless body, leaving him deeply unsettled. Officer Mai informs him that they have discovered Jiang's body at the crime scene and accuses him of lying. Xiaoan, in denial, tried to awaken Jiang, but Officer Shen forcefully led him away. He is thrown into the police van. He tries to plead his innocence, but suddenly gets a vision of himself facing the monster, who tells him that no one will believe him and asserts that only it can keep him alive. The creature demands his body in exchange for helping him take people's lives, but he refuses, claiming his innocence and stating that he will not take lives nor let the monster do the same. The monster retreats, dismissing him as a simple-minded fool who will eventually comply. He abruptly awakens from the dream and the officers scold him for shouting. After that, they get into the van with him, and on the way, Xiaoan imagines himself being sentenced to jail, with his mother collapsing in distress. He tries to break his handcuffs, saying that he is innocent, but Officer Shen stops him again. He attempts to remove the ring with his mouth, but a sudden force throws the officers and he loses consciousness. Later, finds himself with 4 masked men who have taken control of the van and the police officers. One of the masked men reveals that they are following their boss's orders to rescue him and offers Xiaoan a tablet, saying that their boss wants to talk to him. He accepts it hesitantly, but when he sees that their boss is none other than Fubei, he is shocked. To his astonishment, Fubei shows his arm, which has been fully healed. Xiaoan gives him the finger and accuses Fubei of making him wear the cursed ring and pleads with Fubei to testify for him, but he refuses, saying that his men are going to retrieve Jiang's phone from the forensic lab. Meanwhile, a man with glasses goes to the lab and takes Jiang's phone. He then goes to her body to admire her face. However, Jiang's phone that he took rings and something bizarre happens next. Jiang's hands move, clutching the phone, and in a sinister voice, a lifeless, she demands her phone back. She gets up as if she was not dead, scaring the man who attempts to flee the scene. When he looks at the room again, she is gone, leaving him completely shocked. He takes out his walkie-talkie and tells someone that Jiang just rose from the dead, but the person on the line tells him to bring the phone regardless. Back at the van, we learn that the person on the phone is one of the masked men. They hear a scream from the phone saying that Jiang is back as a ghost. Fubei reveals that Jiang has been investigating him, but when he sent his men to probe her, they never returned. He shares his speculation with the group that Jiang is not human. One of the guys receives another call that the men they sent are dead. Jiang retrieved her phone and she has escaped in a vehicle. Fubei orders his men to find her and retrieve the phone, but Xiaoan tells him it's a bad idea. Meanwhile, we see a group of armed men in a tunnel searching for Jiang, but suddenly they find a bunch of zombie-like creatures who attack the men and try to eat them. But one of the men lights a fire that creates an explosion. Now the van arrives outside the tunnel and one of the armed men inform them that their team went in to search for Jiang, who came here. They hear the explosion and proceed to go inside to investigate, but Shen tells Mei not to go in, saying that the house and the tunnel are cursed. He explains that every year some police officers come to investigate, but they all go missing. Since then, the police have prohibited access to this place. The masked men urges them all to go inside, and having no other choice, Xiaoan and the officers step in along with men. Inside, they find a secret passage where the squad members are lying dead. Xiaoan tells one of the men to remove the police officer's handcuffs, saying that it will only slow the group down. One of the men removes the handcuffs on Mei and Shen, threatening to kill them if they try to run. The group then discovers a creepy area containing glass jars of preserved human body parts. Undeterred, the men go ahead, urging the others to follow, unaware that their every move is being closely monitored by a person operating the CCTV system. Suddenly, the path they stood on opens, and they start to slide down, falling into an even darker room. One of the men finds a torch and tries to take it, but it turns out to be a trap, and an arrow shoots at him, which he manages to throw away. However, the arrow hits another man, causing the two to argue. Suddenly, more arrows start flying at them when one of the men raises his torch. Xiaoan recalls his father's words about light sensors and deduces that the arrows are triggered by their torchlight. He then promptly tells everyone to turn off the lights, stopping the arrows. He explains to the group about the trap and suggests that they suddenly expose the trap to very bright light, causing it to malfunction. So one of the masked men throws a bright flashlight, causing the traps to be destroyed. Meanwhile, we see the fat guy monitoring the CCTV with Jiang, who mocks his traps that the men destroyed. The fat guy tells her that the game has just begun, and the group is going to be in danger soon. Undeterred, the masked men and the rest of the group advance further by throwing bright flashlights to defuse the arrows. They come across a grotesque sight: glass capsules containing hybrid creatures with a bare head and a human body, an unsettling creation. Mai points out a peculiar painting nearby, but Shen tells her that it is a live human sacrifice, part of some cruel religious ritual. Xiaoan, however, disagrees with him, and they start arguing. Suddenly, the specimens within the glass containers break the glass and come out. The creatures attack and bite the men. Desperate to defend themselves, the men start to fire their guns, but it has no effect on the creatures. Xiaoan gets scared and tries to hide by a wall, but when he touches it, he finds Jiang's lipstick marking on a brick. He deduces that this must be a secret door and calls everyone. He pushes the brick with the lipstick marking and they discover a passageway. The group runs to the passageway, which turns out to be an elevator transporting them to a room where a girl lies unconscious. Shen approaches the girl upon the men's order, but she suddenly wakes up. Shen identifies her as a celebrity called Yuan. Hearing this, the men start to ask for her autograph, but Mei comes to her rescue, saying that this is not the time for autographs. Mei asks Yuan why she is here, but Yuan starts crying, saying that she doesn't remember anything. Xiaoan suddenly notices stitch marks on her neck and asks everyone to move away from her. But it's too late. The creature that posed as Yuan is ready to strike with skeletal blades that emerge from her back. Yuan swiftly attacks Mai, but Shen comes between them and takes the attack, causing him to fall. Mai rushes to him, but he is already bleeding heavily, and they share a heartfelt moment. Xiaoan asks Mai to be careful and questions Yuan about how she ended up like this. Yuan reveals her motives, expressing her desire for eternal life and youth, which she claims to have achieved through an immortality procedure. As she talks, one of the masked men shoots at her, and she falls to the ground. However, she miraculously gets back up, and her wound quickly heals. The men continue to fire at her, but their futile gunshots have no impact on her seemingly indestructible form. Realizing the dire situation, everyone tries to escape from her. Shen, in order to protect Mai, grasps Yuan's legs to create a diversion and urges Mai to flee to safety. Yuan proves unstoppable, striking Shen down and taking out his heart, proceeding to devour it. Overwhelmed with emotions, Mai tries to go to him, but Xiaoan stops her. One of the masked men throws a bomb at Yuan, creating chaos, and they seize this opportunity to flee the scene. Xiaoan and Mai meet up with two other masked men and explain the situation. But one of the men shoots Mai's leg, saying that she will now become the target of Yuan. He asks Xiaoan to join them as they escape, but Xiaoan refuses, saying that he won't leave Mai in this condition and stays back with her. To her surprise, the men proceed to leave without him, but he threatens the men, saying that he will destroy the ring, which their boss won't be happy about. The men laugh at him, saying that they don't care about the mission, as their own safety is not guaranteed. Before leaving, they place a bomb next to Xiaoan and Mai for their use. Meanwhile, a CCTV guy questions why Jiang left markings for the group to find, reminding her that she cannot evade responsibility if any harm befalls the research facility, and blames her for being favored by the chief corpse of the facility. Despite Jiang's reassurances that she has no intention of going against the interests of the so-called zombie nation, the man known as Old Wang imprisons her in a cell and subjects her to electric shocks as punishment. Back at the tunnels, Xiaoan is determined to protect Mai and tries to stop her from bleeding by tying a piece of cloth on the wound. She starts to feel cold, so he wraps her in his coat and she leans on him. Suddenly, they hear the sound of footsteps approaching them. Mai tells him to leave, saying that it's probably Yuan and should escape when he can while she deals with Yuan. She tells him not to worry about her and assures him that she will lure Yuan into the bomb, but he doesn't listen to her and goes towards the sound to protect Mai, who pleads with him not to sacrifice himself like Shen. As Yuan advances menacingly towards him, he stands his ground and offers himself as a sacrifice if Mai is taken to the hospital. Yuan, however, finds this amusing and laughs at him psychotically. He tells her that he is not negotiating with her and points to a red substance that forms into the monster from earlier. The monster attacks her, making her angry, and she tries to retaliate. However, the seemingly more powerful monster starts attacking again by sending its tentacles at her. She attempts to attack it with her skeletal blades, but nothing happens. The monster lunges at her, attacking ferociously, and captures her. She starts to express regret with life, but the monster ends her before she can finish what she was saying and faces Xiaoan next. Meanwhile, the masked men argue over the bomb, but a rat comes out of nowhere and scares one of the guys. In his frustration, the guy takes out his gun and starts firing at the rat, but escapes. The other guy finds the whole thing amusing and starts laughing. Suddenly, a group of insects appears and bites one of the guys. Back at the tunnel, Mei, despite her wound, tries to find Xiaoan and finally locates him. But before he can help her, she loses consciousness. The monster tells him that she is alive and only fainted due to exhaustion and blood loss. It offers to take her to the hospital and save her if he sacrifices his body to it. He agrees, and the monster sends its tentacles to hold him. It tells him that it only cares about taking others' lives, not saving them, and proceeds to insert the tentacles into his body. Meanwhile, in the CCTV room, Old Wang takes Zhang's phone and sees the video she took of the monster that came out of Xiaoan's mouth. Back at the tunnel, the monster continues to consume Xiaoan as he loses consciousness and declares that it is going to be resurrected after many years and would finally wear its ring. Like the last time, Xiaoan is once again saved by a masked man with a knife who attacks the monster, saving Xiaoan from its deadly grip. Xiaoan regains consciousness and finds that it is the same man from before. The monster and the guy start fighting, and the monster tells him that it's going to take his life like its uncle. Suddenly, Xiaoan starts to realize that the monster was none other than King Dixon of the Shang dynasty. Noticing that he realized its identity, the monster tells him that he should feel honored to fuse with him. He questions the monster about how it survived the battle at Mui and why it emerged from his mouth. The monster explains that it's a god, and anyone who puts on the ring is merely an offering for its resurrection. The man, however, mocks the monster and tells it that it's shameful for it to belong to the zombie nation despite being a king, and threatens to end the monster. Xiaoan agrees with him and throws a rock at the monster, although it has no effect. The monster then imprisons him. The man with the knife continues his assault on the monster, but even if it loses his hand, it grows back. The monster sends claws emerging from the ground at the man, who cuts them off and charges at it. Xiaoan observes the fight, wondering how the man can face this gruesome monster and yet survive until now. Meanwhile, Zhang regains consciousness and finds herself restrained by Old Wan, who tells her that he's going to attempt a horrifying experiment on her. She kicks him in the ball, causing him to knock over a glass jar containing a creepy hand with an eyeball, which starts interfering with the computer. He tries to fix it, but the hand activates a trap, catching him. However, Old Wang manages to escape, and in his panic, he accidentally triggers the self-destruction button. An alarm goes off, indicating that they have 30 minutes to evacuate the room. Old Wang grabs his research paper and starts to leave. Zhang questions him, and he simply tells her that her life is going to end here. Back at the tunnel, Xiaoan sees Mai suddenly fall from the ground and disappear, causing the knife guy to turn around from the fight. The monster takes this opportunity to attack the man and throws him to the ground. Seeing that the man is in danger, Xiaoan sends out the monster's hand that fused with him before. The monster laughs at his pathetic attempt, but something bizarre happens. His hand starts to glow, and he manages to defeat the monster. It vows to become a king again before it starts disintegrating. The monster is absorbed by the ring and glows. The knife guy asks him about it, but he doesn't understand what happened. The knife guy tells him to follow, saying that there's a person they could visit who might know about this. Suddenly, Zhang falls from the ceiling on top of Xiaoan. The knife guy reveals that Zhang is part of the zombie nation and warns him to be careful before launching an attack on her. However, Xiaoan springs to her rescue and tells the guy that she must also be trying to escape from here, pointing to the bruises on her hands and legs. Zhang reveals the self-destruction mode and warns them to leave this place with her soon. He questions her about Mei, and Zhang tells him that Mei is in a safer place than they are. Suddenly, Xiaoan remembers the bomb and points them to it. As the situation grows increasingly dire, the building starts to slowly submerge into the water. Meanwhile, the three are wondering what to do about the bomb. Zhang then confidently approaches the bomb, saying that she will take care of it, and the knife guy excuses himself to go pee. After the guy leaves, she asks Xiaoan to turn around and give her its clothes. Seeing this, he starts imagining things, but is rudely interrupted by an explosion. He learns that Zhang had absorbed the bomb into her body, thus defusing it. She tells him not to reveal this to anyone else, leaving him confused about what he should keep secret. The knife guy rejoins them, and they leave together. On their way, they encounter many lifeless bodies, which Zhang explains were drained by zombified mosquitoes. The mosquitoes wake up and start to chase them. Zhang opens a secret passage and asks them to follow her. The knife guy tells them to go ahead, saying that he will distract the mosquitoes. Zhang promises to leave a trail of lipstick marks as a guide and proceeds ahead with Xiaoan. The knife guy stops the mosquitoes by placing a wooden plank and catches up with them. Zhang then leads them to a huge gaping hole where water is pouring from all sides. She informs them that they need to climb upward to escape. They start to swim, but suddenly Xiaoan is grabbed by his leg and dragged underwater by an octopus. Zhang dives in and unleashes an attack with her claws on the octopus, rescuing him. They reach the surface, but the giant octopus sends out its tentacles to attack them. The knife guy cuts its tentacle with his knife, rescuing Xiaoan. However, the gigantic, monstrous octopus emerged from the water. The knife guy throws a bomb at it, but despite the blast, the octopus survives and shoots poison at them. The knife guy dodges its attacks, but the smoke from the octopus poison makes Xiaoan dizzy, causing him to collapse on the ground. The octopus captures him and the knife guy with its tentacles, but Zhang sends fire at it continuously. The octopus releases its grip on them and retreats into the water. They swim to the other side of the hole and start climbing up a ladder. However, when Xiaoan reaches for the ladder, he is pulled inside and he suddenly wakes up in a familiar hotel room. He wonders if everything that just happened was a dream. Suddenly, to his shock, he discovers that the news is portraying him as the most wanted criminal. He watches the news and learns that Mai is actually the mayor's daughter. He switches off the TV and wonders who rescued him. The next day, Xiaoan sneaks into the hospital to see his mother, who is reading about him in the newspaper. He enters her room, and upon seeing him, his mother becomes worried. She informs him that the police are searching for him everywhere with an arrest warrant. He reassures her of his innocence and tells her that he will find a way to clear his name. His mother expresses her faith in him, and upon hearing the police approaching, he leaves, saying that he is going to find his dad soon. The police try to catch him, but he manages to escape by jumping out of the window. Meanwhile, Old Wang meets up with Chairman Bei, who happens to be the corpse chief, and shows him something interesting. The chairman recalls a similar incident where Old Wang had acquired a bizarre bear and human hybrid creature. However, this time Old Wang presents Mai, who is struggling to free herself. Instead of the appreciation he expected, Old Wang receives a hit from the chairman. The chairman tells him that Mai is the daughter of the mayor and her capture could lead to unnecessary conflict between humans and the zombie nation. Old Wang apologizes and shares the events that transpired in the tunnel and the research facility. He also hands the chairman the video that Zhang took. After watching the video, the chairman praises Old Wang and gives him a small red pill, which he consumes without hesitation. The chairman goes to Meg and begins to literally take her heart out. However, they suddenly hear Zhang's voice. Zhang taunts Old Wang, accusing him of violating the zombie nation's laws. The chairman hands the phone to Zhang and reveals that Old Wang consumed a decomposition pill. As a result, Old Wang undergoes a monstrous transformation, turning into a terrifying creature. He tries to attack, but the chairman opens his blindfold, releasing a black liquid that captures Old Wang. The chairman explains that his plan all along was to awaken the divinity, Dixon's monster, and he declares his intention to become the next zombie king. He ends Old Wang's life using his black tentacles emerging from his eyes. We then see Xiaoan being kidnapped and taken inside a car, only to discover that it's Fugai who has kidnapped him. Seeing Fugai, Xiaoan gets into an argument, blaming him for everything. When Fugai learns that Xiaoan didn't retrieve the phone, he becomes angry, but Xiaoan tries to explain that he was in danger himself. Fugai takes out a knife and gives Xiaoan a menacing look, threatening to cut his fingers to retrieve the ring. In an attempt to escape, Xiaoan reveals to Fugai that the knife-wielding guy Dao mentioned that there is another way to remove the ring. The only catch is that he needs to go to a temple called Tangsu. Upon hearing this, Fugai decides to give him another chance and throws him out of the car. Xiaoan spots a trekking suit displayed in a showroom and decides to steal it to cover himself. The next day, Xiaoan wears the trekking suit and takes a bus to the Wei Mountains. Using the map given by the knife guy, he tries to locate the Tiangsu temple. By evening, he's exhausted from walking and leans on a stick for support. Unfortunately, he loses his footing and falls into a pit. As he tries to get up, he witnesses a girl running away from a group of men. He recognizes her from his class. She's the new transfer student named Tart. Without hesitation, he rushes to her rescue. The men corner Tart and demand something from her, but she refuses. Tart clings to her necklace and explains that she's had the pendant since childhood, but the men claim it's from the Wei Mountains. The men threaten her, demanding the pendant, and warning her that they'll shoot if she doesn't comply. Just as the situation becomes tense, Xiaoan intervenes and tries to prevent the guy from shooting her. He urges Tart to leave while one of the men pursues her. This causes her to lose her balance, and she falls from the cliff. Xiaoan jumps after her, extending his hand to save her. She grabs his hand, and they continue falling together. Just when it seems all hope is lost, Xiaoan's monstrous hand emerges, and one of his eyes glows bright red. Using his monstrous hand, he manages to grab onto a rock, halting their fall. As Mag falls, they find themselves in the forest, and Tart expresses her gratitude for his rescue. She asks about his unusual appearance, referring to his monstrous hand. Xiaoan gives a lame excuse, claiming it's a self-preservation magical art. The dumb girl believes his explanation and surprises him by asking if she can become his disciple. She shares her interest in Chinese history, particularly a figure named Peng Zhu. Amused, Xiaoan explains that Peng Zhu is known for his bedroom escapades in history, and she pretends innocence. They share a laugh together. Their moment is interrupted when they notice coffins hanging beneath the cliff they stand on. Xiaoan narrates the history behind these hanging coffins, tracing it back to the Xia dynasty and the belief that this practice would elevate the dead to the status of deities. As Tart starts to doze off, Xiaoan's thoughts drift to memories of his father's archaeological pursuits in the Wei Mountains. Resentment simmers within him as he recalls feeling abandoned due to his father's absence, leading to his aversion to archaeology. It has been 5 years since his father's disappearance during an archaeological expedition. Fueled by anger, he pees on one of the coffins and unexpectedly, the coffin starts shaking and emitting noises. To his shock, a comical-looking ghost emerges from the coffin, accusing him of disturbing its peace. Surprisingly, the ghost recognizes Xiaoan and introduces itself as Shuzi, a lesser deity, and not a ghost. Tart awakens to this scene and clings to Xiaoan out of fear. Shuzi laughs at them and reveals that the knife-wielding guy is his disciple. It explains that he has received instructions from the overseer of Wei to bring Xiaoan to the Tiangsu temple. Tart becomes excited about the prospect and even asks if she can be Shuzi's disciple, but Shuzi suggests she becomes its wife instead. Much to Xiaoan's horror, she enthusiastically agrees. Shuzi then instructs them to close their eyes and holding their hands propels them off the cliff. They're enveloped in a portal, causing Xiaoan to momentarily feel disoriented before they land safely on solid ground. Xiaoan finds himself in a cave, but Tart and Shuzi are nowhere to be seen. He notices a sage and a group of people worshipping the sage. He recognizes the sage from the painting in the tunnels. To his horror, the worshippers finish their prayers and begin to eat the sage. He tries to convince himself that this must be a memory or dream from 1,000 years ago. Cautiously, he approaches the scene, but one of the men senses him and turns towards him. He wonders if they can perceive his presence. The man comes closer, sniffing the air, and Xiaoan tries to punch him in self-defense. However, he suddenly feels dizzy and is abruptly awakened by Tart. Startled, he sits up and asks what happened. Shuzi scolds him for opening his eyes while traveling through the portal, explaining that he was fortunate to escape from the dream. Tart points out an inscription of the name Peng Zhu on the wall. Xiaoan links this to the imagery in his dream, speculating that the place he saw might have been where Peng Zhu was consumed. Shuzi reveals that it was he who carved the name in simple Chinese characters and explains that the spirit of Peng Zhu still resides in the area. Tart becomes frightened by this revelation and screams in terror. Xiaoan contemplates the idea that the descendants who consumed Peng Zhu's flesh could have triggered the emergence of the zombie nation. Unexpectedly, the knife-wielding guy Dao appears and agrees with his thoughts. Delighted to see Dao, Xiaoan introduces Tart as the master's wife, prompting Dao to burst into laughter. Shuzi becomes embarrassed and Dao explains that deities typically do not marry. Tart admits that she genuinely believes she would marry Shuzi, but Shuzi reassures her that it has no plans to become a deity, implying that it can still marry her. Tart's happiness overflows and she playfully kisses Shuzi on its head, shocking everyone present. Following this interaction, Dao and Xiaoan relax in a hot spring. Dao informs him that the water comes from the temple and is said to extend one's lifespan by 5 years with just one immersion. He explains that bathing in this water is a custom for outsiders before entering the temple. At that moment, Tart approaches them seeking help, explaining that lesser deities similar to Shuzi stole her clothes and ran away. Shuzi arrives and assures her that it's taken care of, handing her back the clothes and revealing that it disciplined the deity that took them. However, Dao drinks too much and collapses into the water. Xiaoan and Dao are taken to a room to rest. As night falls, Xiaoan's hunger prompts him to venture outside the cave and reach the Tiangsu temple. He hears a commotion and investigates, only to find Shuzi and its disciple confronting a man. A battle unfolds, with one of the disciples throwing multiple magical swords at the man, ultimately ending his life. Shuzi praises the other deity for its action, but it takes out an old picture of itself and expresses regret for its current state. Shuzi offers reassurance, mentioning that there is still hope since 5 of their superiors have managed to regain their human forms. Concealed behind a rock, Xiaoan overhears the conversation, including the mention that the seniors regained their forms due to the arrival of an excavation team 5 years ago. Suddenly, a man named Master Puryang appears, and as Xiaoan tries to flee, another man grabs him by the throat. Other men join the scene, throwing Xiaoan to the ground and declaring that they should put an end to him. However, one of the men suddenly notices the devil ring on his hand and questions how he came into possession of it, noting that it belongs to the temple. Xiaoan manages to escape the man's grasp, and the other deities draw their swords. Just as tension escalates, Zhou intervenes, positioning itself between them and announcing that Xiaoan is an invited guest. The men wonder what the true lord wants with him. Zhou guides him inside the temple. Once inside, a delicious feast is laid out, causing Xiaoan's mouth to water at the sight of the abundant food. The true lord arrives and is taken aback when he sees Xiaoan eating like a pig when nobody else has started. Witnessing this, one of the men approaches Xiaoan, abruptly overturning the table and sending food flying. He accuses Xiaoan of disrespecting the true lord and attempts to strike him. Dao intervenes, attempting to defuse the situation, but the man shoves Dao aside and launches a powerful magical attack at Xiaoan. To everyone's astonishment, Xiaoan survives the attack by using his monstrous hand to absorb and redirect the energy back at the attacker. They engage in combat, with the man launching more magical attacks at Xiaoan, who counters using his monster hand. Xiaoan warns the man not to provoke him. Suddenly, the true lord steps between them, and in a moment of rage, Xiaoan attempts to attack the true lord. However, his attempt proves futile and he is swiftly thrown aside. The other men draw their swords, ready to defend the true lord, and one of the men recognizes Xiaoan's resemblance to his father from the excavation group. The true lord, however, remains composed, instructing everyone to sit down. He questions Xiaoan about how he came into possession of the ring, which has been lost for many years. Xiaoan explains that he acquired the ring accidentally and reveals that he hasn't been able to remove it, leading him to seek help at the temple. The true lord reveals that the 3 previous temple masters who wore the ring all exploded and perished. Panic sets in for Xiaoan as he pleads with the true lord to remove the ring, who explains that no one who has worn the ring has survived before, implying that there is no known method to remove it, and leaves the scene. Meanwhile, some of the men discuss whether the true lord plans to make Xiaoan his successor due to the ring. One of them speculates that it's likely, suggesting that the true lord might announce his intentions the next day. The men believe that the true lord is becoming eccentric in his old age and conspire against him by planning to switch his pills. Later that night, Dao pours a drink for Xiaoan, claiming that the true lord is pleased with him. However, Xiaoan is in no mood for celebration and questions Dao about how he managed to survive when the other masters who wore the ring did not. He presents his theory to Dao, suggesting that the monster within the ring refrained from directly entering his body to avoid causing an explosion. Instead, it might have restructured his body, waiting for the right time to take over. Meanwhile, Jiang and the chairman enter the caves, searching for Xiaoan. Back at the temple, Zhou hands the true lord his daily pills, and he takes them. However, upon entering his room, he becomes paranoid, checking behind partitions for any signs of intrusion. Xiaoan and Dao overhear gunshots, and they rush outside to investigate. They discover Zhou announcing that the true lord has been murdered. The deities stand with their swords outside the true lord's room, but they hesitate to enter when gunshots warn them off. Dao and Xiaoan join the scene, and when they enter the room, they are stunned to find Tart holding the gun. Outside, there are zombie nation intrusion, and the men from earlier fight them off. Zhou joins them and informs them that Tart has murdered the true lord, and the men leave saying that they are going to avenge the master. But inside, they are smirking, knowing that everything is going according to the plan. After they leave, the chairman finds Zhou and holds it by its throat, questioning where the divinity is. But when it refuses to tell, the chairman unleashes his black tentacles on it and consumes Zhou. Dao questions Tart as to why she killed the true lord, and she reveals that she did it to avenge her father. The deities discuss this and realize that her father was a disciple of the temple. She tells them that the true lord deceived everyone and that 5 years ago, the excavation team who came here were killed at the temple, and her father knew about this. So the temple people killed her father to keep the secret. Xiaoan realized with horror that his father was part of that excavation group. We see what happened with the excavation team. They were hunted down by the zombie nation, but the deities killed the zombies and brought them inside the temple to heal. Among the team was Xiaoan's father with distinct red hair. We see a guy called Yaozi, who is Tart's father, assuring him that they are going to be alright. Zhou then takes the excavation team to a room where there is a higher deity resembling Zhou. The team thanks the deity, who tells them that it's part of their job to defeat the zombie nation. Xiaoan's dad, who is called Zhu, asks the deities hesitantly why their appearance is peculiar except for the man standing there, who explains that he hasn't cultivated fully and hence is in this mortal state. One of the excavation team members collapses and the higher deity asks them all to take rest. Zhu takes him to their room, but the guy tells him that there is something wrong with this palace. They decide to ask the man Yaozi. Zhu goes to see Yaozi, who is making dolls, who explains that it's for his daughter Tart and reveals that she is in France with her mother. Zhu overhears their conversation and scolds Yaozi for getting a girl pregnant, as deities are not allowed to have martial affairs, and tells him that he can't enter the cultivation as a punishment. Zhou asks Xiaowazi to take them to the divinity, sharing his suspicion regarding the deities. The excavation team runs some tests with a tool, but suddenly the higher deity along with a few other deities discover them and accuses Xiaowazi of bringing outsiders to the divinity. The higher deity asks to confine Xiaowazi as a traitor, but Zhu intervenes, saying that they were only trying to help, and explains that the radiation in the deities' bodies is far higher than the normal people, and tells the deities that this radiation is probably why their appearance have changed and mutated to their current one. The higher deity calls this theory rubbish and accuses Zhou of denouncing their practice. He then uses his powers to capture the excavation team and asks the other deities to throw them out of the temple. One of the deities tells the higher one that found a way for them to get their human appearance, and the higher one agrees to its plan. The deities trap the excavation team in an underground place, and Xiaowazi sneaks there to give them water to drink. Days pass, and the excavation team members' bodies start to shrink. Xiaowazi witnessed one of the deities bring a plate that contained pills made from the shrunk bodies of the excavation team to the higher one and tell it to consume what is in the plate, saying that it will revert them back to their human form. The higher one, including 5 other deities, consumes the weird-looking substance, and their body starts transforming to appear human. One of the deities, who now appears human, notices Xiaowazi witnessed this and goes behind to capture and kill him. We are now back to the present, with Tart explaining this whole event to Dao and Xiaoan. Juzi arrives and confirms it all to be true and shows the pill that they created 5 years ago. Seeing this, Xiaoan becomes furious, with his monster hand emerging, and tells them that he will avenge his father. Dao rescues Tart and Suzy from the scene, but Xiaoan follows them. Suddenly, one of the deities who took the pill and transformed into human send a fire blast at Xiaoan. The fire does considerable damage to the temple, but Xiaoan gets up like nothing happened. He sends out his demon hand and takes out one of the deities. He approaches the rest menacingly, while the other guy sends out a powerful beam at him. He dodges it and charges forward. The guy shoots out a barrage of powerful beams at him, and another guy sends a hurricane. The deities combine their efforts to defeat him. He is now struggling to stand, but to everyone's astonishment, he stops their attacks. He goes berserk and starts attacking the deities furiously. They combine their strength and send a deity binding spell at him. They manage to restrain him with golden chains, but soon he breaks free. They summon a powerful attack from the sky and throw it at him, causing massive destruction. However, Xiaoan manages to survive, to everyone's shock. He's about to send his monstrous hand to kill one of the deities, but collapses on the ground instead, with his monstrous hand gone. The deities move to end Xiaoan, but Dao suddenly appears and stops them. They attack Dao and throw him to the ground. One of the deities proceeds to kill Dao with his own sword, but Shuzi intervenes and throws the sword away, saving Dao. Shuzi pleads with the rest of the deities to forgive Dao, and one of them says they would if Dao bows to them 3 times, but he refuses to do so, and the guy shoots a powerful beam from his finger to take his life. Shuzi sacrifices himself and takes the hit. Dao holds his master Xuzi and starts crying, unable to save him. Meanwhile, we see Zhang and the chairman arrive at the temple. The chairman, who is the corpse chief, sends out his zombie men to destroy the temple. The deities capture Dao, Tart, and Xiaoan, taking them inside the temple underground. He orders the other deities to sever Xiaoan's hand and remove the ring. When a deity tries to sever Xiaoan's hand with a knife, a blinding light emanates from the ring. Later, the deities hold a meeting and appoint one of the deities called Pure Yang as their new lord. Yang gives a speech and tells them that they have to consume the divine pills to overthrow the zombie nation. He tells the other deities that they will sacrifice Xiaoan and the rest to make the pills, and all the deities start cheering and praising him. Suddenly, a bell goes off and one of the deities rushes to the meeting, saying that the temple is under attack by the zombie nation. Yang tells them to remain calm, summons a sword, and asks them to follow him. Meanwhile, Zhang and the chairman stand outside the divinity, ready to enter, and she senses Xiaoan's energy from within. They break the door and go in, excited to uncover the deity's secret. They see a tunnel, jump in, and Zhang is secretly determined to rescue Xiaoan, who is unconscious and starts dreaming about his life so far. He regrets not being able to help his mother and getting into this situation. He thinks of Mei and how he couldn't protect her as well. He wishes that he could at least meet Zhang one last time, even though she has too many secrets. Finally, he thinks of his father, but suddenly the red monster appears in his dream and asks if he is giving up. The monster persuades him to avenge his father's death and reminds him of his friends who are in danger. It continues to manipulate him, saying that the only way he can save them all is by fusing with it. In the end, we see Xiaoan succumb to its manipulation and regain his monster eye.